Welcome to Innovate Her with Jadisa, the podcast that dives deep into the inspiring world of women of color in the edtech industry. It's raw and authentic. There is no format, right? The best kind of professional development and conversations are those that are unscripted. Welcome to Innovate Her with Jadisa, where we spotlight the voices, vision, and brilliance of women of color, transforming edtech. I'm your host, Jadisa, and each episode we'll explore the incredible stories, impactful work, and vibrant community of women of color through technology. Today's guest is a global presenter, an edtech guru, an advocate for anti-racism in the work of technology, and she's the founder of Schools Out Cocktails. With a resume like that, she needs no introduction from me, but please help me welcome Jornéa Armant to the show.
Thank you. That was such a wonderful introduction. So glad to be here.
Well, Jornéa, please introduce yourself to our guests. Who are you? And I know I've just said it all, but I think that you can say it a lot better than I have.
Who are you? I could say, that's a loaded question, but it's really not. I am a person of love and of purpose, and at this state in my life of just being. And I'm a person who I've recognized and know my gifts over time. And it is my duty to give those gifts to others in the best ways that I can every single day. So that's who I am. Now, when it comes to my professional resume, I am known as a savvy educator. So that gives you something there, right? I am an educator for over 23 years now, which is really weird to say. And I've held roles such as a second grade teacher, an instructional coach, instructional technology specialist, administrator. I worked for a State Department of Education in Alabama. I've worked for a startup company called Flipgrid, who was acquired by Microsoft in 2018. And then I had the pleasure of leading communities at Microsoft Flip the last 8 years of my life. In 2024, Microsoft decided to sunset our beloved product. And so that put me in I would say, a great position to think and rework how I'm going to use my gifts in the next chapter. And so during that time frame, I launched the business, explored some passions, made some connections, and back again working for a company called Milestone Technologies in support of Google. So I'm working on a Google project right now. And just really, like I said, I'm a mom first and foremost. So a lot of the work that I do, I think about my kids, when it comes to education. To me, every child should have those experiences where they feel safe, welcomed, loved, because when we are in that environment, that's when we best can thrive and be our best selves and think past the challenges that we are faced with and think more so on the end of the possibilities. So that is me.
Well, thank you. Actually, my first question I was going to ask you was about the topic of tech, but one word that you just kept mentioning just now during your introduction was love. And for women of color, a lot of what we do is centered on love. It's centered on what we want to see, not only with our own kids, but the kids within our communities. And so I have to now skip that question and go directly into, can you tell us a pivotal moment in your career that shaped your mission in anti-racism work and innovation? And the reason for it, y'all, if y'all are new here, Jornéa and I met through Twitter. I was sharing a lot of my work with the classroom, with my students, my overage undercredited students, but also my thoughts on racism and anti-racism, how we should support students of color. And Jornéa was one of the first people, I'm not just going to say ed tech innovators, but warm-hearted people who welcomed me into the space and was like, I want to share your voice. And that automatically made me feel loved and made me feel seen and made me feel heard, right? I don't think people understand how much it means when a person that looks like you and who's actually doing the work and has experience doing it with students that look like you, it means so much more than someone just liking a post. So now we're getting all teary-eyed, which is a good thing, right? Because we're emotional people.
I'm telling myself, Jornéa, don't cry. You can see the tears in my eyes. But yes, and you're right. That word love means a lot. I live my life by three words: love, grow, and inspire. And I hope whoever comes into contact with me in any capacity feels love, feels my positive energy resonating with them. I am a person, when I meet someone, I carry them with me in some capacity. Um, and then growth. I hope that when I interact with someone, that they have an opportunity to do something different and become something, not to say become something different, but continue their process of becoming, right? We're all in that process. And then to inspire. And when I say that word inspire, you get that fire ignited in you. But to me, when you're truly inspired, you want to pass it on to the next person, right? And that's the continuous cycle with that. So thank you for mentioning all of that beautiful work and what that meant to you, because that tells me that that mission that I have to love, grow, and inspire has been welcomed and received by you. So thank you.
Well, by me and many, right? It's not just you haven't just touched on me. You've touched the lives of many women. I'm just happy that I'm able to now take that opportunity to highlight your work because I just know that you're going to keep touching women and also men, but it's not about y'all right now, right? It's not about y'all right now. So, I want to
The
like
pivotal
dive.
moment.
I
I
mean,
didn't
here we
forget the
go.
question. I didn't forget the question. I definitely did not forget that question, that pivotal moment. Okay.
Yes.
So for me, that moment was a personal experience that I had back in 2015. I was an instructional coach at an elementary school. At that time, we had transitioned principals. And shout out to the principal I had beforehand. She was such an incredible, powerful Black woman. She wanted to make sure her school was where she wanted it to be before that time of retirement. And, we were great partners in that. I developed such great relationships with teachers in that school building, many of whom I still stay connected with today. And once again, they were at the point where they could say yes and okay, I'm willing to do this, because they knew they had a partner in it. So wonderful, wonderful experiences happening. We changed principals after she retired, obviously. And, this person came in with the mindset of, I know everything and we're going to do things my way. And, that sense of community started to break down. There were moments where, teachers were almost kind of put up against each other by the way he treated some and not others. But during this time frame, it was involved in a lot of professional development opportunities for growth for myself. And there was an opportunity with the United States Department of Education where they had a program where educators could be liaisons between the state and, of course, our nation, right? And so I started thinking about the opportunities that that type of program might bring to my community. Right. The area I was living in was in North Alabama, which was very unique at that time. It was one of the fastest growing cities, more engineers per capita at that moment in time, but it also had a very rural community. And so there were these dynamics where you saw clearly the differences between the haves and the have-nots, et cetera. And so when that opportunity was presented to me, I said, you know what, this can be a great opportunity to have a voice, share the things that are happening, the great things that are happening within our state, but then also bring in resources and opportunities. And, there were going to be people in every state in this capacity. And I believe we learn best when we learn from each other, right? And so I gravitate towards spaces like that. So of course I applied. I get that message back like, yes, you have moved on to the next round. And so things were going great. I went from round to round to round to round. And then we're at the final round,
Mhm.
right? And at this moment, they had to speak to your current manager, which was the principal that
Mhm.
I had, obviously. And so before he had his interview, he comes walking towards my room, which was this, they make spaces in any kind of place in a building. So I'm
Yep.
sure my room was once like a storage closet. It didn't have any windows or anything
Oh,
inside.
no.
So he walks down to my room and he said, "Can I speak to you for a moment?" I said, "Absolutely. Come on in," welcoming the person in. He closes the door. He sits down in my chair and he says, "Why are you doing this?" I'm like, "Doing what?" He's like, "Why are you applying, for this type of program?" So I'm explaining, I'm excited, like explaining why I want to be a part of this program. And he looks at me and he says, and granted, I was working on my doctorate at the time too. So he kind of brought that in as well. And he says, "These types of things are not for people like you."
Ugh.
Now, I tell people all the time, when it comes to memorable moments, you have those happy, joyous times that change the trajectory of your life. And then you also have those moments that are hurtful moments that also change the trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
So that was the pivotal moment when I said, if he can blatantly tell me that in front of my face after being behind the shield for
Mhm.
so long, there's other people in this world that are behind the shield that are not, how would I say it, not allowing people to be who they are and offering the opportunity to say, "I may not agree with you, but I'm going to support you one way or another," right? And not tear somebody else down because of their own belief systems. So I think that was the moment for me. Like I said, that was 2015. So I think like during that time frame, of course there were lots of, so many things happening in our world,
Mm.
but it was more like silenced at that moment in time. Things were swept under the rug a lot of times, right? And people were just kind of like, "I'm just going to stay in my lane
Mhm.
and keep doing what I'm doing." But at some point, you have to say, enough is enough. And for me, there's that phrase, with great power comes great responsibility. For me, any space that I've been in, I want to utilize that space to also amplify the things that I believe in, right?
Yes.
Because once again, I know my gifts and it is my duty to utilize those gifts no matter where I'm at. And if I choose to bury those gifts, then I'm doing a disservice to myself, to this universe, to God, to people, right? And I can't live with that. I can't sit right with that. So that was that pivotal moment. And from, that moment on, yeah, I've used it in my keynote. Like I said, I appreciate everything that has happened in my life because it shapes me into a better person. It shapes me into a person who continuously thinks about the experiences that other people have. That word empathy resonates a lot with me, right? So, yeah, that's that moment.
Listen, I'm sitting here like, yes, 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 but I'm also thinking about the millions of women of color who have gone through a similar or the very same thing that you've endured and probably just shut down, completely shut down, right? As opposed to saying, what do you say? I have a gift and I know that I have to utilize that gift. For me, I don't know, it just rings true. It makes me think about all the times when someone might have said to me that something was impossible. And I'm just like, I'm gonna prove to you that it's possible, and I'm gonna do it so fast that you're not even gonna see it coming. They always say that when you're teaching students, or even when you have students around you, they usually do the opposite, right? So if you tell a student they can't use phones, they normally use phones. If you tell a student you won't be able to succeed, most of those students find a way to succeed. And you just sharing your story, I'm just like, I want the women who are looking at this episode, regardless of if you're a woman of color, if you're Caucasian, wherever you are in the world, think about a time where someone shut down your goals and your dreams to keep you in a place because having you in that place was comfortable for them. Knowing that you're not going to be their boss or their leader or to see you shine was comfortable enough for them. And so they shut down your dream. I want you to think about what Jornay just said and use that as a stepping stool to make your dream come true. Right. And we know, especially for women of color and women in general in this tech field, it is not easy. But Jornay's work wasn't just in Alabama. It wasn't just in New Orleans. I mentioned she's a global educator. She's a global presenter. And since we're on the topic of pivotal moments and experiences, Jornay, as you've traveled, especially as a woman of color in the tech field, like, can you just, I don't know, share with us what it's like to connect with diverse audiences?
Oh my gosh. You see, I immediately just smiled, right? The word that comes to mind is joy.
Yeah.
Truly joy. So I will say I have always been a person that has chased the curiosity. Like, I've always been a curious kid. Like, I wonder, and being a kid from New Orleans, and with my parents, we didn't travel internationally when I was younger. That was not a part of my world. So I learned about cultures and experiences through reading, right? And, as I got older, obviously, with technology. And so once I got to like my adult age and I was able to make the choices that I wanted to make and travel just personally for myself, just seeing like the beauty and the differences, but also just recognizing we are all the same. We all have our own flavor and spin on things, but if you really get to know people like in their cultures, there's so much that resonates across the board. And so that those seeds, I think for me, that wish, those ideas, they're
Mm.
seeds that are planted. And the part about planting seeds is that you have to work. I'm gonna say that too. I'm gonna say it again. You can't just plant the seeds, right? You have to work to
Mm.
get those seeds in order to grow. And you also have to have patience because everything has a growing season, right? You have to realize, watermelons are not going to grow every year, every
Yeah.
time, every year, right? Or whatever the plant is.
Mhm.
We are designed by purpose, right? And so, in saying that, when I had the opportunity to work at Flipgrid, we did a bus tour. Prior to that, I would go into classrooms. I went into Joe Merrill and Kristen Merrill's classroom in Florida, Jess Boyce's classroom, Tanya Averett's classroom, and sat there, learned with them, from them, taking the beautiful things that happened in their classroom and transforming them with technology, especially Flipgrid at that time. When we were able to then have opportunities with a global community, and we've always had those opportunities digitally, but my first opportunity globally with educators was an event that Microsoft put on called E2. It was the educator exchange where they brought in educators from every country. I mean, it was just a beautiful representation of people who are changing the world. Educators change the world every single day. But when you bring those people together, it's going to be some great things happening. For me, your network, your net worth is your net work. Net, look, my brain, my mind, everything is getting jumbled. But your net work is your net worth. Okay.
Mhm.
And so with having all of those educators from various countries, et cetera, you are learning about different possibilities. Sometimes, especially here in America, we take so many things for granted.
Yeah.
And, when you have to, or when you're forced, in a sense, to think creatively because of the lack of resources that you have, sometimes those are the ideas that can be scaled globally, right? Because it keeps everybody in mind. It just doesn't think about who has the opportunities or who has the resources or the devices, et cetera. It's thinking about everybody. So yeah, like spending time with educators in their home country as well is also a beautiful thing. I was able to visit South Africa and spend some time with educators who I had connected with on social media for a very, very long time, but to see them face to face, be inside of their school buildings, talking about how the dynamics of, their nation's culture also has impacted education over time. It just makes you a person not jumps at thinking about a solution, but sit back and listen, because when you sit back and listen, those solutions start to come out, right? You give people the opportunity to talk and that metacognition kicks in. They may be asking you a question, but they really are answering it themselves, because the answer sometimes lives in us, and it just takes those other people around us to start, realizing what it really is that we know we are here to do and guide us through the path of how to get there. So yeah, that global experience is a beautiful one that I hope to continue to explore. It's been a while now since I've visited an educator in their home countries, but hopefully soon.
We gotta make it happen.
Yes,
We
definitely.
gotta make it happen. We gotta do a collab.
Yes.
If you're listening, one thing that I want to mention is if you've ever participated in any of my global cultural exchanges, Jornéa Armant was my manager at the time. And when I say every single idea that I would bring to, she's like, come on, let's do it. Or she'll say, I wonder if, and it's usually like hiking it and taking, whatever the exchange is to the next level, because I knew that I had her support, but I also knew that she was like, what the kids say, 10 toes down. She
Mhm.
was 10 toes down with it in a sense of she wanted us to find a way to have communities connect, especially communities in underrepresented areas, right? And that takes me into this topic of AI. So
Mhm.
I'm on board with AI. I am. If people have followed me, they know that I do a lot of parent academies where I feel like parents in our communities, in communities of people that look like me, need those resources. And if no one else is going to give it to them, if no one else is going to give them those skills, then I don't mind me and my little wagon going into a school district and saying, okay, I'm here to do these PDs. But I would love for you to touch on the role of AI in shaping the future of education, but specifically for children of color. And do you feel like it's empowering our underrepresented communities?
I personally believe yes. And I say that with a lot of love once
Mm,
again. I've been in this space for a while and seen when AI really, generative AI is what I'm speaking of right now, but when it really came on the scene a few years ago, and there was a frenzy, like, what is going to happen, right?
mm,
And every time I personally have an experience with generative AI, my brain once again starts thinking about wonder. I wonder if I XYZ, what's going to happen.
yeah.
So, what I've seen over time, and I'm speaking on my personal experience here, just like a person, right? I'm sitting face to face with you.
Mhm,
The more I talk to you, the more I know you, the more I learn about you, the more I can tailor things to meet your needs. It's a
mhm.
simple concept, a concept that we've been sharing with educators for eons, right?
Yeah.
But what people are experiencing now is that that person, is now that AI chatbot that's always with them, right? I will tell you, use well, I'm not saying every single one of them, but I've used Copilot, I've used Gemini, I use ChatGPT, I use Perplexity, right? And you'll find that you know, it's running, for sure in a script where it's a natural language processing. So it's taking in that information from you. It's taking in your tone. It's taking in your style. It's taking in your interest. It's taking in all of those things and putting out information that's going to delight you, support you, grow you, all the things that great educators do. So I'm going to equate it to that. To get to your question about, what can this do for our students? It's unlocking the possibilities that's sitting right in front of them. right? Like I said, I'm a very creative person. I come up with ideas because I don't sleep a lot. But the challenge sometimes for me is putting those ideas into action. I am a visionary. Like I know my skill set, I know my strengths. I took a strengths finder test and I will tell you over and over again these 5 things about me will keep coming up. I'm a person with connectedness. I'm a person that's a developer. I'm a person who has this belief system. I put beliefs in the forefront of everything. I'm futuristic and I'm an arranger, right? So the more that I talk to a chat bot, it's going to pick up those things, right? Because I'm not going to ask something that I don't care about, right? So the beauty in that for our students, if they hadn't felt it beforehand
Mhm.
with a teacher, they may feel more seen.
Yeah.
They may feel more accepted. They may feel more supportive. They may feel like I can do this, right? A lot of times we want to jump and get to this level up here, right? But we know that there's points along the way that we have to do to get there.
Yeah.
The challenge is we don't know those steps to get there. A lot of times teachers can help us figure out those steps to get there, but unfortunately a lot of teachers struggle with those steps to
Mhm.
help their students get from point A to point B. And and no fault to anyone, but you have 30 something kids in a classroom that you got to get from point A to point B, and they're all point A's are different.
Uh-huh.
So it's loaded. I anyone who's watching who's not an educator, go out there and thank an educator because they truly spend time and time again, hours trying to figure out what's going to work for their babies. Now, what AI can do now in the classroom is now help get to that point B for each individual student at a more rapid pace. Learning is about trying, refining. It's that back and forth process,
Yeah.
right? So to me, AI helps to supercharge that. I love having like a brainstorm session. I think of AI chatbot as a thought partner,
Yeah.
right? So I start sharing my thoughts and I love asking, what haven't I considered? Right? We don't know everything. That's the beauty of collaboration, right? So if you think about an AI chatbot as a thought partner, that's one easy question after you've given it the information that you have and and you believe in it is a part of you, give you those things that you should consider. Why? That's the growth piece, right? You're going to have a growth opportunity. When you see that growth opportunity happen in a matter of seconds, that you can now read and go, think about that. Like you become smarter, you become wiser, but now you have to do something with it.
Uh-huh.
Right. So then that's the next challenging piece. Like we can have this rapid fire, great information, but now we have to think critically. I don't take anything face value from a person. So I'm not going to take anything face value from a chat bot. It's a starting point, right? It should be a back and forth conversation. If you give me something, I'm going to ask why, right? So do that same process with your AI chat bot of choice. Ask it to share with you how it came up with that answer. So
Mhm.
now you're not just getting an answer, you're getting the so-called thinking behind the answer, right? And then you can take that way of thinking and you can personally apply it to other aspects of your life, right? So I am excited about this for our babies who have dreams of being an entrepreneur and they know they want to be able to, have okay, my kids are 15 and 12. I'm just going to preface this with that. All right. So right now they're into the hair, they're into the nails, etc. So my youngest, she actually gets her hair braided by a 15-year-old who has a passion for that. And I'm okay with that because we have to foster our kids' passions, right? Pour into them. And so, this young lady, she's coming up with her business structure. You got to put down your deposit before, I love it,
Yes.
and our kids can do this at early ages. It'll help them become more successful as adults because nothing, in my mind, nothing can stop them, right? If you don't know the process of starting a business, in a matter of seconds, you can have a whole business plan ready to go with contacts, right? Now you just have to take the action, with it. So that is what I'm excited about, not just those learning experiences within the classroom, but how these babies are bringing this back home to their families. Like you said, you're having these parenting workshops with the parents about AI. And always in education, we've always had parental engagement
Mhm.
opportunities, right? And a lot of times the parental engagement opportunities focus more on the student.
Yeah.
We have to focus on our parents' needs too,
Yeah.
right? As a parent, I want to grow as well, right? And I may not be in that space where I am connecting between, what my children are learning, especially with technology, and applying it to my life. So, for example, let's say something as simple as Google tools, like collaborative tools, etc. Right? So if a child is using this in the classroom and there's a parent who might have, access to these Google apps in their place of business, but they're not utilizing it to the best of their ability. If you have a parent workshop that is showcasing how students are organizing their drives and they're sharing and collaborating with other people and they're being creative with their tools, then hopefully you can help those parents start to unlock how they can take these skills and apply it to their work setting, to their personal lives, and become a user of this technology that will benefit their life and their family's trajectories as well. Well, yeah, it just excites me so much about what can happen in that classroom, not only for the student and their families, because when we impact the students and their families, you start impacting the community. When we impact the community, we get to live and work in peace, and we get to live and work and know that we all come here with something special to offer the world, and we could collaborate with each other to help each other get to those goals. So that is the promise, I think, of AI. A beautiful promise. And my friends Ken Shelton and Dee Lanier, they wrote this amazing book called The Promises and Perils of AI. Granted, that might not be the exact title off the top of my head, but it is The Promises and Perils of AI in Education.
Just looking for
And I know you're looking for it on your shelf. And if I was right by my desk, it would be right there as well. But you know, I think the beauty is there for sure. But with anything in our world, anything could be used for good, but it also can be used for evil, right? So that's the part where we have to arm and guard ourselves. It's okay to ask questions. How is this data being utilized? In a lot of the workshops that I engage educators with, educators, especially when you show them what it can do, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I'm going to save so much time, right? But if you go into a platform that is not safe,
mm,
that is not protected, you are exposing your students' data, and those models are utilizing that, and that's not right, right? So, another wave of that is educating on, the things that can happen if you're not utilizing this technology in the right ways. So, yes,
thank
I
you.
know I said a whole lot to answer your question.
It's the perfect message because I've been also introducing AI to my CTE teachers and their electrical systems teachers and also automotive teachers. And anybody that has ever coached a CTE teacher who has been teaching CTE or a career technical course for over 20 years knows it's hard to get them to use a different tool. Right? Because these are men and women who have literally their entire careers built on using specific tools to either repair a car or an electrical system. And so now here I go coming in and saying, oh, but you can leverage AI for classroom instruction. And most of the time the guys are like, "Yeah, no, we're good." And now we're in like week 8, and in week 8 they're like, "Oh, where has this been all these years?" But week 1 they were like, "Yeah, I'm not touching it." What do you mean? Like I even had a teacher like pull up his cell phone. He goes, "What happens when all this shuts down?" And I was like, "You do know you teach electrical systems and technology course." That word technology is still there because
Mhm.
everything is still advancing, even if we don't think of technology as this huge impact that influences what we do on a daily basis. It does. And you mentioned about pouring into parents, and immediately, one plus one, I mean, y'all do the math. I thought about pouring, and I thought about parents, and that equated to schools out cocktails.
Mhm. Yeah,
Schools out cocktails is such a unique concept, and I know we're running out of time, so please let us know, like, what inspired you to create it.
oh my gosh. Okay. So I was in Rochester, New York for a conference called Nice Gate. And I was at a bar because if you are an educator, then you go to your conference, but you can't wait to the moment where you can just unwind. Because being at a conference, it's like information overload. You have this, excitement, but you become a little fatigued. And so you can't wait until like the social events later. And so I'm at this bar, and my brain, I told you, my brain just goes all the time. And I look at my colleague and friend, Ann Cosma, and I'm like, like, it would be, like, awesome to, have these like a company that focuses on alcohol specifically for educators, alcohol brands specifically for educators. So I started coming up with like all of these ideas centered around classroom learning. And at that time, I utilized AI to come up with like the very first list of cocktails. And it was hilarious. Like we're laughing at the bar, looking at the names of everything. And so to me, one, as educators, we have to take care of ourselves and do the things that we absolutely love doing. And I absolutely love a great cocktail, but I have my cocktail when school's out, right? And everything that we do that we have a passion for as an educator, we do it when school's out. So if you enjoy yoga, you may do an afternoon yoga session when school's out.
I hope
If
so.
you are a DJ, you may have that side hustle on the side when school's out, right? So that's the concept of school's out. Like we are a whole person as an educator. Some people just see us sometimes just as a teacher, but we're a teacher and something else. So what I've done with schools out cocktails is that I've paired just best practices in education or concepts in education that people might be familiar, but maybe some unfamiliarity with those concepts or those processes or those practices in the classroom. And I give them a name. So the name, most of the time, is AI generated. It just depends on my creative process, at the moment. And so I blend in my love of AI, my love of cocktails, and then, just my love of community, right? And technology and bring it all together. So what you'll see on Schools Out page, and you can go to schools.out and schools with a SKOOLZ. Of course, it had to be totally kind of rebranded from just a traditional word school. But what you'll see on that page is that there will always be a cocktail where the image or the video might be AI generated. So if it's AI generated, I do share like which tool was utilized to create that image. Now that was my way of playing around, right? That was my way of seeing and practicing how to utilize these various AI generative video and photo tools. And so you'll see that, but then once you click inside the post, you'll see not just the ingredients and the directions for the cocktail, but you'll see that educational practice and why is it so important, right? So I like to bring a fun element to learning. So yeah, schools out cocktails, that's our thing. I have some thoughts about expanding what that can look like and be like, but my whole hope in all of this with schools out is that it will support educators in learning opportunities. I'm hoping with schools out, I can get some sponsors. Hopefully, alcohol brands, if you're listening and watching, I would love to have a sponsor for schools out cocktail events
Mhm.
with educators, because any of those monies that are generated from sponsors are going to go right back to educators and funding their conference opportunities. From my experience, usually there's only a handful of teachers from a school who ever get an opportunity to learn outside of their school building. And for me, that changed the trajectory of my career. So I
Mhm.
want to be able to gift that to other educators and pay for those conference fees and those travel fees. Sometimes maybe they'll cover the conference, but they don't cover their travel.
Yep.
And for educators, sometimes that's challenging depending on your current situation to be able to fund to travel, to go to a conference and to learn. So I want to remove all of those barriers, so that more educators can have quality learning experiences to best meet the needs of their students.
And that's the perfect way to give back to the community. And I know you mentioned having these sponsorships and partnerships with alcohol brands, but I'm thinking even with the conference spaces themselves, their conference spaces or even tech companies are always doing after parties. So why not allow schools out to do kind of like these themed drinks that are specifically tied to your tech company? I think that would be amazing. But even restaurants around the area, if you know that there's a conference coming in, make sure you guys follow schools out at what, Jornay? Where can they find you?
Okay, so on Instagram, right now we're only on Instagram as I'm starting this off, but you can go to schools, which is spelled SKOOLZ. All right, shout out to any teacher who works with students who might be dyslexic. I think it's a beautiful thing. I was inspired by creative spellings. So schools, SKOOLZ dot out, OUT. And yeah, so you'll see schools out cocktails there. And yeah, I encourage you to interact with the post. Try out some of the cocktails, in your free time. Maybe I'll host like a virtual happy hour or something one day. That could be fun where
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
shares what school's out cocktail, they're sipping on, for the day or for the moment. Um, yeah, definitely schools out cocktails on Instagram. Yes, I'm getting excited just inside because I know this will be something greater at another point in time. And then I'm gonna go back to this podcast video and said, look, we manifested what we talked about right here. So I appreciate you, Jaditza, for just one offering me this opportunity to share my voice on your platform. Just as you said that you were inspired by me, you continuously inspire me. And I can't thank you enough for you being you. You're magically, wonderfully made, and I receive it. I receive it all. Keep
Oh,
doing what you're doing, and thank you for creating a platform where women's voices are elevated.
oh, thank you. I appreciate you. And I love that closing, but we still owe the audience a message. So I would love for you to deliver a message to either a woman that's currently working and making waves in the industry, or a young woman who's exploring career options, or even just a girl who dreams of becoming an ed tech innovator one day. What is your message to one of those community or spaces of women or young women?
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the very first thing I said. Be the person that you are designed to be. Be the person that when you look in the mirror, you want to see every single day. Be the person that's going to make a difference in someone else's life. Be the person that will challenge the norm. Don't worry about what happened in the past. That's over. We could learn from it, but
Mhm.
it's over. All right. And we all go through those moments, but those moments are shaping us and shifting us to become who we were meant to be. So that is my message to all of the other women rock stars out here trying to figure it all out. It will all work out. It will all work out. So go out there and just be that positive light, radiate that positive energy, be the rainbow in someone else's life. And I can guarantee you it will pour back right into you and water those seeds that you have planted so that you can be who you are called to be.
And how I supposed to close out after that? That makes me want to keep this conversation going. Well, thank you all for joining us for this session of Innovate Her with Jadiksa, where we are spotlighting the brilliance of women of color who are transforming not only edtech, but education around the world. Thank you to our beautiful guest, Jornéa Armant. And remember, y'all, just be.